It was in Rivne region where the first Ukrainian book, Peresopnitsky Gospel, on which Ukrainian presidents of new era swear the oaths, saw the light of the day. Rivnenshina was the region which gave the first textbook, Greco-Slavonic primer, to Ukraine and the first printed full Slavonic Bible to Europe. It's in the north of Rivne region, in the locality of Yuzefen, where until now there is a mighty oak of Prince Ihor, which is 1,300 years old and thus is the oldest tree in Ukraine. It's in Rivne Polisa, where until today people use the latest thing in yesterday's technique, light rail, and swim across rivers by homemade ferries. It's in Rivne region, where there are Volyn Athens, Nadzluchanska Switzerland, and the whole village of Nobel Prize winners. Nobel Prize winners, or noble inhabitants, live in a backcountry village in Rivne region. It is less than 15 kilometers from Belarus and more than 40 kilometers to the district center, Zarychna. This is a Polisa village called Nobel. It is situated next to the Nobel Lake, which is more important for locals than the Nobel Prize itself. The lake of unbelievable beauty and impassable thickets of Polisa forests feed the local inhabitants with fish and berries and attract the tourists with their primeval gorgeousness. Furthermore, once a year, Nobel village becomes the center of Ukrainian humor. The masters of Nefty are not lazy to come here even from very distant places, which are more than 1,000 kilometers away, in order to get a Nobel Prize. No hints for world recognition. The only thing that Ukrainian Nobel Prize and Swedish Nobel Prize have in common is the name. Despite that fact, the local winners are absolutely sure that they are the only ones who know the real secret of rescue for mankind. It lies in humor. In Svaritsevice village, which is located in Dubna district, the people have still preserved the pre-Christian ceremony called Vodimnya Kusta, bush guiding. This happens during so-called green holidays, when young girls sing songs and guide a bush girl dressed in verdure from house to house. People who are visited by the bush should have prosperity on their farms. Every year, people from Poland, Belgium, Germany, France and even from the United States of America come to Svaritsevice village to see the ceremony. In Cerniki village, Zarychna district, 2/3 of the population have got the same last name, Poluhovich. This means there are 2,500 people with the same family name, so one may have a tough task to figure out who is who. There are more than 50 Poluhovichs with the patronymic of Ivanovich and the same amount of namesakes whose name is Vasil Vasilovich in Cerniki village. That's why in here the nickname is much more important than the last name written in one's passport. Poluhovichs who live in Cerniki village can cook one of the tastiest pork dishes by an ancient Polisa recipe. This dish is called bahuk, or it's also known as madzik. You need to stuff a regular bladder with the traditionally flavored choice meat, leave it, puncture it with a needle, hang it up in a loft and wait until it's ready. However, this will not happen very soon, approximately in 6 months. This is the longest in Europe active light train on Tonivka Zarychna. Its length is 106 kilometers. For inhabitants of Rivne Polisa, it is literally a Trans-Polisa railway. If they didn't have this little diesel locomotive with 4 blue cars, they wouldn't get anywhere, neither to district center nor to the neighboring village. The roads through Polisa forests and swamps are not very friendly, and sometimes there are no roads at all. The locals call the train Polisa tram, trainee or cuckoo. They say that a long time ago the locomotives had a series not GU but KU, and that is why they called it a cuckoo. There is one more version of the story. When the train gives the signal in the forests, it sounds like cuckoo. This small rarity train starts its route at 7 a.m. from Antonika station and heads to the Zarychna station, which is the district center in the north of Rivne region. In the cold season, the cars are heated by self-made cold furnaces. The maximum speed of the old trainee is equal to 40 kilometers per hour. In spring and in summer, the majority of the travelers who go by the light train are tourists. There are not that many locals among them. However, Poles, Austrians, Englishmen and even Canadians have been in the Polisa wilderness for many times. It seems that only foreigners know about this light rail. In the middle of its route, the trainee crosses a unique bridge over Styr River in Blinok village, the only big wooden railway bridge in Ukraine. Its length is more than 150 meters. And when Styr overflows in spring, it is possible to get to the opposite bank only by this railway bridge. Besides this bridge, the light rail has got 30 bridges more. They are small but also wooden. The terminal station is Zarechna, 10 kilometers from Belarusian border. Then the Rarity train departs to Antonivka, closer to civilization. From there, one can switch from the light rail to a regular train and get, for instance, to the capital. Nevertheless, if you wish to come back to a fairy tale, don't wait too much, it starts in Antonivka. Ostrog. At first sight, it is the most ordinary district center located 50 kilometers to southeast from Rivne. It is called Volhynia Athens. It is a city with almost a 1,000-year-old history. From 14th and until 17th century, it was owned by the most influential and the richest at the time family of Princes Ostrowski. They've made Ostrog a powerful educational, scientific and cultural center of Eastern Europe. First of all, Ostrog was well recognized for its Slavic Greek-Latin Academy, the first higher educational establishment in Eastern Europe. The special page of Volhynia Athens history is the activity of Ostrog Publishing House. The famous Ivan Fedorov was the first Ostrog publisher. The summit of Ivan Fedorov's publishing activity and, at the same time, of the activity of scientific personnel of Ostrog Academy headed by Herasim Smotritsky was the world's first full edition of the books of Old Testament and New Testament written in the Church Slavonic language and known as Ostrog Bible. Medieval defensive walls of Princes Ostrowski stand in Volhynia Athens until now. The stone defensive fortress built in 14th century truly amazes. That's the only in Ukraine and in Eastern Europe single-tower dwelling castle which was preserved until today. Nowadays, there is a museum of local law, history and economy in it. Bohoyavlenska Church was also a part of defensive installations of the town. Lutsk Tower is the one that remained of the ancient Ostrog fortifications. Nowadays, there is a book and printing museum in here. Tatar Tower used to stand in Tatar Street in Muslim suburb of Ostrog. Starting from 1512, captive Tatars settled in this street. They served in Prince's army and protected Ostrog as their native town. In Ostrog suburb, which is in the French manner called Belle-Image, in Mezhirich village, on the hill which was erected by hand, one can see the walls of monastery fortress marked with melon. This is Svato-Troitsky or Saint Trinity Monastery. It was founded by the monarchs from Kiev-Pechersk Lavra, and it was recalled for the first time in the 13th century chronicles. Mezhirich belonged to the famous family of Ostrowski. In the 15th century, Vasil Ostrowski, who had a nickname Krasny or Handsome for his beauty, erected the walls of the fortress. Later on, his son, Ivan, built St. Trinity Church. The last of the Ostrowski family, Janusz, handed the monastery over to Order of Friars Minor, and starting from the 17th century, the castle and the Trinity Church were reconstructed into the Franciscan monastery. From north to south, they built on two-storied buildings with cells to the temple. At the external angles there appeared three-storied round towers with loopholes and cone-shaped roofs. Those are the elements which made the monastic abode look like castle. Next to the fortifications, the prince erected the palace for himself, which wasn't preserved till our time. Nevertheless, until now there is a huge stove in an open air. In the cold seasons, the warriors warmed up near it. For the inhabitants of the defensive monastery, the stove also served as a smithy. They also made resin in it, which was later poured out on the hands of the assailants. This is how the monks protected their sanctuary. Renaissance fireplace, as they also call the monastic stove, even now remains the same as it was built. It lacks only a huge tank. The Mezhirich St. Trinity Monastery is considered to be one of the most picturesque defensive monasteries of Ukraine. And although from a distance for travelers it looks like a fantastic castle, humble monastic life flows under its walls. One more property of the glorious family of Ostrowski, Dubno. Those walls were built in 1492 by the Prince Konstantin Ivanovich Ostrowski, the only representative of Orthodox princes who was honored with a high position of Lithuanian hetman. In Dubno Castle he had trophies obtained in numerous battles, valuables, decorations, weapons and home appliances. The treasures were kept in special chests in the castle vault. During the Tatars' attacks, the Dubno Castle was completely shackled with tin and armor and had enormous purveyance. Janusz Ostrowski took care of the reinforcement of the Dubno fortress. He fortified the castle with bastions. Captive Tatars dug a deep ditch. Its walls were covered with white stones. They also laid a suspension bridge which was taken off every evening. Hence the castle became even more unassailable. Conquerors were attracted by the treasures. The historians believe that the treasures were the real reason of the dozens of enemy attacks on Dubno. Only in 1577 the Tatars tried to occupy the castle twice, however it was in vain. This is Beatka, or Maidenly Tower. It is named after the niece of Konstantin Ostrovsky, Beata Dolska. The girl was the only one who kept her head during her wedding when she saw the Tatars. She ran to the tower and fired a shot from the gun volley. The cannonball blew up the tent of the Hun. The Tatar army was left without a chief and abandoned the town. The castle was neglected by the successor of Ostrovsky, Janusz Sangushko. By the way, he also lost all of the treasures that passed to him by route of succession. Later on, the Lubomirski family renewed the castle in the 18th century. Until the beginning of the 20th century, no one could even capture the castle, and only during World War I, Austrian artillery heavily destroyed it. The ruins remained there until 1934, when the Polish authorities rebuilt it anew. Starting from 1993, Dubno Castle is the part of Dubno State Historical and Cultural Preserve. Additionally, it is the oldest building of the town. Not far from Dubno in Tarakhanev village, historical name is Tatarhanev, there is an abandoned military fortress, Dubno Fort. The general public calls it Tarakhanev Fort. Even though the name in Ukrainian may seem to originate from the word cockroach, there are obviously no cockroaches in the building. However, the ghosts will find you themselves. Of course, only if your imagination allows them to ramble with you around dark and cold caves. The catacombs of the Tarakhanev Fort are a complete mysticism. In here, absolute darkness blows the episodes from the most scary horror movies. Without a flashlight and a guide, one may never get out of the mazes of the Tarakhanev Fort. That's the place where traps from the past are waiting for you. The Dubno Fort was built in the beginning of the last century in case of war. At this time, Rivnenshchina was a frontier zone of Russian Empire. However, due to the twist of fate, the Russian army hasn't ever used the Dubno Fort according to its function. In 1900, it was transformed into a storehouse and later on into a prison. In 1915, after the Russian troops had left the fort without a fight, Austrians used the masterpiece of military engineering. A year after, they wounded themselves during the famous Brusilov breakthrough. Today, the Tarakhanev Fort lives its own life. When it's warm, the fort welcomes tourists almost every day. Doesn't forgive casual handling. Broken leg or hand is not the worst what can happen. The Tarakhanev Fort has never been used as a defensive installation. Maybe that is the reason why right now it fights those who come to shatter its peace and quiet. On Rivne land, there is a place where one needs to decline his hand and to bow low to the thousands of dissident Ukrainian Cossacks. They protected Ukrainian independence under the direction of Bogdan Khmelnytsky and died here in Plashevo village in 1651 on the notorious field of Berestetsky battle. Now it is the National Historical and Memorial Preserve. The place of dramatic battle between the Cossacks and peasant troops of Bogdan Khmelnytsky and the army of Polish king Jan Kazimierz II is called Zhuravliha Ostrov. According to the legend, the name comes from the integration of the words Zhura, sorrow, and Liho, disaster, because after the battle everything in here was covered with bones. The locals plowed them even after hundreds of years. At the beginning of the last century, on the field of Berestetsky battle in the Zhuravliha Ostrov, they have placed a temple memorial, Georgievska Church, with Cossack burial vault. Nowadays, it is a cathedral of St. George's Monastery. The church memorial doesn't have any analogues. The entrance to the temple is simultaneously an iconostasis. The uniqueness of this sanctuary also lies in the fact that it is three-floor. In other words, it contains three acting churches. The main is Georgievska. The church of the St. Boris and Gleb, so-called balcony church, is on the second floor. The third, underground church, is the Paraskevi Pyatnitsy church. That's where the Cossacks' burial vault, 4-meter stone vault with glass ceiling, is located. In the special wall niches, in the sepulchre of the Paraskevi Pyatnitsy church, one can also see the bones of the dead. From the vault there is the underground passage which leads to the Cossack St. Michael's Church. St. Michael's Church was built in the year before the Berestetsky battle in the Ostrov village. In 1912, it was taken into pieces and moved to Zhuravliha. There is a legend that Bogdan Khmelnytsky prayed in this church right before the battle.